Hi, this is Mike Phillips from Upper Deck, and you are listening to the Marvel Card Collectors Podcast.
Hello everybody, my name is Ian Taylor and welcome to the Marvel Card Collectors Podcast, brought to you by the Marvel Cards Fan Collective, an awesome community of card collectors and creators. You can find our two groups on Facebook, details of which are at the end of this podcast, so come check us out. With me as always is my co-pilot in all things Marvel cards. He puts the jam in the Jambalaya. It's Norrin Rad.
Hey buddy, how you doing?
All right. I was very tempted to put on an accent for that, kind of a southern Louisiana kind of accent, maybe. But
I almost butchered one. I am not good at it whatsoever.
Why I didn't do it.
I'm surrounded by it too. I got nothing. The jam and jambalaya. I don't know. Yeah. I can't do it. Now I'm embarrassed, but we'll move on.
Listen, I'll quite happily bust out my Michael Caine. I'll even go Australian, but
see, there you go.
Southern US, I can't.
Southern
do it.
US, can't do it.
Can't do it. Anyway, but I certainly can do East Coast US. I can't actually, but that's a really, really weak way of segueing into introducing today's guest. This is going to be like this all episode, so I promise you that. We're often corpse. I'm really excited to speak to this gentleman. When we spoke to Travis from Upper Deck a few weeks back, he dropped this fine fellow's name and said, "Oh yeah, you've got to speak to Mike." So this evening, folks, we speak to Mike Phillips, Executive Vice President of Sales and Marketing at the Upper Deck Company. My goodness, that's a job title,
cool.
Sir.
So cool.
Good evening, Mike. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
You're
of
more
course.
than welcome. You're more
It's a
than
lot
welcome.
to say. It is a lot to say. I appreciate that.
Does your business card hinge and unfold like a Panini
like a
playbook?
booklet sketch.
I do often struggle with what exactly to put on a business card, but I will tell you this: I lay claim, as does really everybody at Upper Deck, in having the coolest business cards on earth, because I'm pretty sure no one else gets to hand a business card to somebody with Michael Jordan pictured on it. That's pretty cool.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's pretty cool.
You see, now this just makes me want to start collecting them. Because well, no. Do you remember, Mike? And you may well know about this. I think it might be slightly before your time. I don't know. But when we spoke to Bob Budiansky a few weeks back, there are some very, very difficult to get a hold of Marvel editor cards.
Yes.
They did around 91, 92.
They were caricatures of all the editors and creative directors and everyone on the team, and they're pretty rare to find. But they also signed the back of them, so it's pretty cool. There should be kind of like a little Upper Deck spotlight insert set. I think that would be pretty awesome.
That's pretty cool. Yeah. We're able to choose which of our spokesmen we want to put on, and I can't really go wrong with MJ, so that was fairly easy choice.
Good. I love it.
And just so you know, Ian, just as a side note, my daughter is currently at Tulane University, which is down in New Orleans. So I too am working on my Southern Louisiana accent. I find myself sort of slowly getting into one when I'm sitting at a restaurant, perhaps, or having a conversation with someone down there. You can't help it. It's a very sort of relaxing, laid back accent, and it's quite nice.
This is what I'm hearing. I've never been lucky enough to make the trip down there. So one day, when all of this 2020, 2021 is in the rearview mirror, I'm very much hoping to make the trip. So Mike, we recently heard you on another show focusing on the sports side, and there were so many things in there, and I'm not going to ask you to repeat everything you said on that because it was very hockey focused, and but it did give me some really interesting little insights into your history and where you've kind of been and what sets you've touched and what card designs you've touched, especially, which I'm really looking forward to talking about. But just kind of tell us where you kind of started, because I know that you've been at Upper Deck for what, 20 years now?
21 in a 21 in 2 weeks.
21 in 2 weeks. Okay.
Wow.
But before that, you were at Fleer back in the 90s, and that's quite a journey. So just tell us your kind of origin story. How did you start? Where did you come up from?
Sure. So I always like to tell people, I started collecting baseball cards when I was 7 or 8 years old. My mom would bring them home. When she'd come home from work, she'd stop at the drugstore, pick up a couple packs, and that really started me with the collecting bug. When friends were selling lemonade on the corner, I was selling cards, and that's a true story. So really, that was my first sort of introduction into the business of cards, and just been a collector since then. Dabbled in some card shows in the late 80s. And then once I graduated from college, I had the opportunity to co-own a trading card and comic shop in the early 90s, and enjoyed doing that. Learned a lot. Did that for a couple of years, and had the opportunity to take a position at a distributor. And this distributor was primarily a comic book distributor, but also was, at the time, the largest trading card distributor in the industry. And most people didn't know that because they thought of us as a comic book distributor, which we were first and foremost, but we sold a lot of cards. The name of that company was Heroes World Distribution. And I don't know if you've ever heard that name before.
Yeah.
So I sort of managed the trading card business while I was there, and that was a really interesting era in the trading card world, because that was when the first edition of Marvel Masterpieces had come out when I was in my shop, but the second one in '93 came out when I was at Heroes World. So I remember those pallets of cards rolling in like it was yesterday.
That's so great.
So when I was at Heroes World from 93 to 95. And during my time at Heroes World, we were acquired by Marvel. Marvel wanted to, at the time, there were really only, I don't know how much you know about the history of comic book distribution, but back then I think there were only really 3 primary comic book distributors, us being the smallest of the 3. And I guess Marvel wanted to bring some of their distribution in-house. So they acquired Heroes World. And Heroes World and Marvel, at that time had already acquired both Fleer and Skybox. And for me, I lived in central New Jersey, and Fleer Skybox was located in southern New Jersey. So when the opportunity came up to transfer within the company, I jumped at it. So in September of 1995, I joined Fleer Skybox, and I was there for 5 years, and just a really, really fantastic time in the history of the industry. Got to do a lot of different things in those 5 years. I helped create Fleer's first sort of hobby distribution program. Worked on the international side of our business for a bit, and then had the opportunity to work in the product development side on the sports side of things, which was just a whole lot of fun. Got to work with just some incredible people, passionate, talented people. And then in early 2000, had the opportunity to move on to Upper Deck, on the hobby sales side of things, and jumped at that opportunity and have been here ever since. Wow. So that's kind of the 2-minute tour of my career. But we can certainly delve in. We can certainly delve into any part you want. But I do like to. I'm kind of proud of the fact that I'm betting that I'm the only person in this industry who could say that they were a show dealer, a shop owner, work for a hobby distributor, as well as a manufacturer. So I've run the gamut.
That's quite an impressive. Sorry, it was quite an impressive resume. My brain is sparking all over with just what it must have been like. Because of course it's very interesting. Obviously, the Marvel cards side of things, after kind of around '96 time, that kind of just when that bubble burst a little bit, I think it's fair to say, with Marvel with it. But of course now we're in another kind of real boom period, certainly in the last year, I'd say, 18 months. It must be quite bizarre seeing two like big being there in your younger days, although you don't look a day older than when you were at that hobby shop.
Thank you.
So whatever you're drinking, I'll have some of it.
Definitely feel it.
I think we all do at the moment. But it must be interesting seeing two ends of like almost I don't want to make you feel old, but almost a generational span, from like the OG days of those early sets, and now all the resurgence in interest in those early sets, all the current product coming out. What similarities can you draw between those two periods, what you're seeing now and what you kind of experienced then? Is there anything?
I definitely think there are. I think there are quite a few. I think one of the things that jumps out at me, especially now, and you mentioned this past year, which has been such a unique time in my mind for entertainment trading cards as a whole, certainly for Marvel, is that reintroduction. I remember early on the novelty of Marvel trading cards in the early 90s and how, people's first reaction to them, people being introduced to them, not even knowing really that they existed. A lot of instances knew that sports cards, baseball cards existed, but not as familiar with the entertainment side. And I think you referenced that time in the middle there where things went south. Because of that, it enabled sort of things to be reborn. And I think you're seeing a lot of that now, this reintroduction both to and it's running a little bit parallel to what's going on the sports side of the business, believe it or not. You're really introducing this new generation of people to Marvel trading cards that, quite frankly, didn't really know they existed. Now you have different dynamics going on. You have the MCU now, and there's a lot of differences between then and now, but and the just the sheer popularity of the Marvel universe now. But I do notice some similarities, especially in people discovering that these cards actually exist, and honestly, how cool they can look and what you can do with a 2.5 by 3.5 inch piece of cardboard, as opposed to artwork or even a comic book, which is much larger size. Yeah. So I do enjoy that, and I think one more thing, what we're seeing on the sports side is definitely happening on entertainment. I think as we're forced to be at home all this time, and it's forcing us to go back and look at what we collected and go through collections of whether it be trading cards, comics, or what have you, introducing it with pride to your kids is also happening quite a bit these days. And I think it leads to the resurgence of all trading cards right now as well.
Yeah, absolutely. No, we're definitely seeing, like, Masterpieces 2020 is a prime example. We saw it in 2018 as well. You got guys kind of 30s, 40s who are doing live box breaks on Facebook with their kids. With their 5, 6, 7. One guy, Brad Galley, he's you may know him. He's a broadcaster out of Detroit, I think, and he opened a box of Homecoming with his 3-year-old son, and it was just hilarious watching him.
That's adorable.
So we are seeing that a lot, and they gate crashed the episode that he was guest on as well. So that was quite sweet. One thing that I really picked up on, which is kind of what I hinted at in our introduction, was I didn't realize how many of the card designs and styles that are now kind of merging into the Marvel sphere, and have been for a number of years now. Things like PMGs, things like Jambalayas, started on the sports side, and actually you were kind of on the ground floor with a lot of those kind of designs. So tell us a little bit about kind of PMGs, Jambalayas, some of those things that people now hunt for and yearn for and go after, and how you remember them coming to be.
Yeah, so I was fortunate to join Fleer at a time when we were really just starting to see the influx of serial numbered cards, parallels, really sort of intricate die cuts and other technologies and substrates. The substrate is a term we use freely in the industry. It's another term for what you're printing on, the material you're printing on, and just having back, in the 90s when sales were fairly robust still, you had some pretty decent sized budgets to try things, and there was a lot of openness to try new things and see what collectors gravitated towards, and we had some that they ran away from. So it was really cool to be able to try these new things, and when I look back on it now, in no way did I ever think that so much of what we were doing back then would be as important as it is today. I don't think you could ever really, know that as you're doing it. But I freely admit I never dreamed it would have the impact that it still does to this day. I really was fortunate to work, like I mentioned earlier, with some insanely talented people, and our designers at the time were just fantastic, brilliant designers who were just so creative and open to trying things, and would, I looked forward to the meetings with them every time because they just present us with these just things I'd never think of. And of course, I'm not a designer, but when you place a piece of artwork or a photo of an athlete on it, it just clicked. It just worked, and it was really fun to go through those and to test things. We did a lot of consumer research where we'd go to shows and bring people in as focus groups and show them a variety of different looks and let them, and we did a lot of that back then. But it was we just happened to be in a time where we had a combination of talent, we had budget, and we had some fantastic licenses to work with, and a lot of it worked. I personally, I worked on a brand in sports called EX, which probably won't mean much to people who collect entertainment cards, but that was a very technology-based set. And in the EX 2000 product, which was basketball in 96, 97, I created an insert called Jambalaya. And what I was doing with that was I was trying to think of names that I wanted to do a dunking insert, and just trying to come up with names that fit dunking with the word jam. And I like spicy food, but but Jambalaya just fit. And you give the designer that name to work with. The process goes, you come up with the concepts you want in the set from a ratio standpoint and the subjects and the set size, and you hand it over to the designers to go and run with. And they took that, and they knew it was going to be a rare insert, and they ran with it, and they came up with this substrate and this die cut that just popped. It just worked. We knew it right away. And Jambalaya in particular, I always hone in on because it's such an important insert to this day. But that really, a lot of that credit goes to the designers because they put the pieces together and really hit it out of the park.
I mean, even that card for me totally popped. I wasn't into sports when I was young, but I was a kid of the 90s. And man, when Jambalaya's hit, everyone knew about it. I remember seeing them in the sports shops. I remember the dunking. I remember Tim Duncan. I remember all these things back in the day. So crazy that you were a creator of that. Because, we've recently, because of the boom, everyone's come to Marvel cards to take interest. And I think the coolest conversations I've had with many people who are sports and also people who are new to the hobby was that, man, there's so much design in all of these cards. How come I never noticed before? Like QFX, the Fleer Retros, the TI-22s from Fleer Retro 2013. You know what I mean? And you even did callbacks to the 90 cards for Fleer Retro 2015. I don't even think people realize that there's callbacks to these designs.
Well, part of the impetus behind that was, we have this great license in Marvel, and when you have this potential, this potentially massive collector base of people who read Marvel comics, obviously, and enjoy the movies, and yet trading cards were sort of lagging. And we had the Fleer at Upper Deck. I'm speaking. We had the Fleer name. We had the brands, and we had access to those old designs and the equity in those. And we thought, all right, how do we get people to try Marvel trading cards? And you had these designs and these insert names that were associated with, had this great history. They were really unique. They were high valued on the sports side. Let's try bringing those over to Marvel and seeing if we can get some people who know what those are to come over and check out Marvel trading cards. And I think in a way it worked. It really introduced people to those designs. And, PMGs, another precious metal gems, is another example of that, where, we tried that in Marvel, and it was a stretch, but I think as collectors, both from the sports side and Marvel collectors, realized how cool they looked, and then were able to reference what some of those things were worth on the sports side. I think those two things really, helped the Marvel trading cards, particularly introducing them into Marvel trading cards, really helped elevate them.
I think it also 100%. I also think that we're looking now with everyone going back and being like, okay, what do I chase? What do I get graded? Because that's kind of the boom we're in right now. PMGs is on the tip of everybody's tongue, and that's what everyone's chasing right now. And I do think it's interesting looking at PMGs and then how Marvel cards have become more modern Marvel cards, right? The tier systems, the serial numbers, and everything like that. It seems like a very natural progression, and it's very cool to go back now and to see the larger effect that's happening in our hobby.
Yeah, it is. And like I said, I in a million years, none of us thought that those things would have such a lasting effect. But to this day, and we were careful when we introduced them into new sets that we try to maybe incorporate some new nuances, but we don't want to stray too far from what made them what they are. And to your point about grading, I mean, geez, you talk about a condition sensitive item. I mean, the precious metal gem and that full overlay of bright foil that just are so susceptible to chipping in today's market, especially. I mean, that just adds a whole other layer of potential collectability and value. We like to pride ourselves in creating new cards that should all be, relatively, solid condition. But at the end of the day, you have to cut them, and it's just impossible for every card to be perfect, especially when you're dealing with foils and substrates like we're talking about today.
Yeah, and that's the conversation we're having with our groups and with our audiences, right? A lot of people are coming in like, okay, 1990 Marvel Universe was overproduced. Why is everybody making a big deal? And then you're like, there's off-centering issues. There's soft corners. I mean, it's definitely a hell of a ride to figure out everything that could possibly go wrong with these pieces of cardboard. But PMGs and these very special inserts, especially when they're foiled and they're die cut and such beautiful work, gets even more difficult to find these in great condition.
It is. And I think you're right. I mean, the grading phenomenon has really elevated the attention levels of all trading card collectors, what's going on right now. And, I love looking at, and I'm blown away by some of the prices being realized for even things from like the early Marvel holograms and some of these things, like from sets, to your point, that were never thought of as limited edition products. But you're seeing, I just saw the other day a Marvel hologram finish, I think it was a PSA 10 at like $15,000. And I mean, that's fantastic. It's insane.
Mike's going down to his basement to get the suitcase out. Yeah, where you've got all the the holograms. Yeah,
it really is. It really is. And even like, look, I'll wholeheartedly admit, I referenced those pallets of 93 Marvel masterpieces coming into the warehouse when I was back at Heroes World. Those early Marvel masterpiece products were not short. I think we all know that they were not lightly produced.
No.
Yet they've been consumed to the point where, they've like a lot of other things have dried up, and now the sport within a sport is kind of trying to find that PSA 10, both in just a base card that has popular artwork on it, or some of the inserts that have a little bit more condition sensitivity. So it's sort of like a sport within a sport.
I hate to ask this. I'm so sorry.
Yep.
Very quickly.
Go on.
Sure.
Let's talk about pallets of 1996 Marvel Masterpiece. I think that might be.
You're gonna go
Where
there.
are those hiding, Mike? I know they're in your garage. You can't lie to us anymore. We found you.
Yeah, so that was the correct me if I'm wrong, but that was sort of the vertical box, right? The square one. Am I right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Those have been. Those are tough. I mean, I'm stating the obvious, but those have been gone for a while. Like, you can blame the current sort of state of the industry for quickly making things that weren't hard to find now much harder to find, but that box was hard to find a long time ago. So I don't know. And of course I was at Fleer at that point, so I wasn't in a warehouse setting where I'd actually see those pallets coming in, but I have to imagine there weren't many. And for that to be as dry for this long, those are tough.
Well, you see, there's the reason Norrin touches on it, and this is this urban legend that exists within Marvel cards that there was stock that never made it out because of the events that were happening around Marvel of that set, and so they were still somewhere in the liquidation when Fleer went bye-bye in 2000, I believe. And I'm not asking you for any intel on that, but I just wondered if you'd. He's shameless. He's American. I'm a reserve Brit. But it is one of those things. I wasn't sure if you were aware that kind of rumor persists.
I have to admit I have not heard that. I have spent many a day walking through the Fleer warehouse when I was there, for all sorts of reasons. And I attended the Fleer auction as well. I don't recall seeing any of that, and I don't recall it on any inventory report from my time. But then again, that was a long time ago. I remember a lot of things, but that would be digging in pretty deep. I don't.
That's okay.
I want you to know, Mike. I want you to know that everyone right now, all the Marvel card collectors, have this map with a bunch of lines and string trying to line up the events.
There is one guy who actually does have something.
We've
similar.
Just connected the dots. So this is a big lead, Mike. So thanks. I'm
honored to be a clue.
There's two things to unpack there. First of all, there's in my mind's eye, it's like the warehouse at the end of Indiana Jones where they wheel in the Ark
goes forever.
Yeah. So I just got an image of you as that man. So next time I watch that film, I think it's you. And the second thing is Fleer auction. So is that what I think it might be when it was at the selling off of the remaining assets? Yeah. I've never heard of this. Wow.
Yeah, there was a liquidation auction. I want to say it was in 2006. Okay. And when Fleer was in bankruptcy, and all the assets were sold off. So yeah, there were a lot of pretty, at the time, again, you're talking about 2006, and it wasn't, overly compelling at the time, although I'm sure they raised a lot of money for the people who were owed money. But, at the time, certainly on the sports side, and I assume on the entertainment side as well, I don't think anybody dreamed that what was there then would have the value that it has now. Mm-hmm. So people in hindsight probably got some pretty good bargains.
Hindsight's always 20/20. I think we'd all admit to that. That's very interesting. This is these kind of. It must have been so weird to be there. I mean, obviously you've been at Upper Deck 6 years at that point, but it must be so odd to see the kind of the almost the bones of the company you'd worked for.
It was a lot of mixed emotion, and I'll be honest with you, it was because I had such fond memories of my time there, but I will wholeheartedly admit it was also pretty fun to be there with someone else's credit card. so I was like, I wasn't spending my money,
buybacks.
That part was interesting. And of course, there was, in that sort of, in that sort of liquidation, we immediately think of the cards and things like that, but it was fixtures, it was office furniture, it was so there were things in there that were coming up for auction that I for years I sat at that table, or in that meeting room and things like that. So it was bittersweet.
Yeah,
bittersweet,
I'm sure.
But it was an interesting couple days, that's for sure.
Well, we'll have to. Everyone will be hearing this and they'll be making notes anyway. So you mentioned the designers, and I'd not heard of these people. But you mentioned it on the recent episode that you did of the Sports Card Live show. And I went and tracked down another episode of another podcast where they interviewed one of this couple of Arena Designs.
Sure.
And I believe that they were. I'd never heard of them until that interview with you. So. And we will at some point, hopefully, reach out to them, and if they're willing to, we'll talk to them directly about their experiences if they're up for that. But so are those the guys who you referenced when you were talking, among others, I'm sure, about the creativity behind designing some of the things like the Jambalayas, like the PMGs, and some of the other concepts?
Yes. And you're correct. It's a couple, Gene and Earl, Arena Design. Yep. And they were our primary designers for sports cards during that time period. I don't believe they worked on entertainment, but I'm not positive of that. But they, their main job was certainly design work on trading cards. And yeah, they were the design force behind a lot of the things and a lot of the insert concepts that we're talking about. Certainly Jambalaya, PMG, and a lot of the other inserts that have made their way into Marvel trading cards. Absolutely. A lot of those really impactful designs, a lot of the unique, intricate die cuts that you see from back then. A lot of the use of really unique foil boards and other substrates, the sort of the three-dimensional, the use of there were a lot of acetate cards then, which is clear plastic. They introduced this fantastic acetate that was, for lack of a better term, I'm sure there's a more technical term. We called it glow edge stock, where it was a clear plastic, but the edges of it had like a fluorescent glow to them. So when you're opening up a pack I, like many collectors, when you open up a pack, you kind of fan the side a little bit to see if you have anything really cool, and those would really just jump out at you, right? So those have always been one of my favorites, and we use that on EX 2001 and subsequent EX releases for parallels of the base cards. But those were another thing. So yeah, they had a hand in quite a bit of those designs, and super talented people, really just genuine, nice people who I'm happy to say I remain friends with to this day.
Oh, good.
And just real good people.
Good.
That's awesome.
Good. That's nice. I mean, I'm going to dive into the episode where I've just found it on YouTube, and I'm 6 minutes in, and already I was getting excited, and then I had to come and talk. And
there's a on the PMGs, as a side note, there's a great story. Gene tells it certainly a lot better than I do, where we were trying to come up with, as you know, there's the original PMGs were primarily red, but the first 10 were green, and they were numbered as part of the 100. But the first 10 were green, and we were trying to come up with what to do for those first 10 before we decided on green. And Gene has this fantastic ring, and it's got this green stone in it. Again, she can give a lot more detail than me, but basically the origin story of the PMG green is from the stone in her ring. That's where that comes from. That has a little bit of a Marvel tinge to it, I think.
It definitely does. Little Thanos gauntlet. I love it.
That ring has a little bit of power, but that's where the PMG green actually came from.
Wow,
that's amazing.
Little interesting tidbit there.
That's amazing.
Love that.
Actually, in the recent absolutely mad blood in the water flurry of Fleer Ultra Spider-Man selling out on EPAC a couple of weeks back, which I'm sure you'll have seen from all the internal memos. But I pulled a green PMG Spider-Man. And that traded extremely well, shall we say? But one of the my train of thought has left the station. I just completely. It's that green. It just dazzles you when you look at it.
I mean, the colors are so pretty, man.
Well, I don't know if you probably won't know, but we one of the parallels of. It just occurred to me while you were talking earlier. It's obviously with the sports side, people do go after certain players. I've recently in the last 2 years gotten into NFL cards, and Patriots are the team I tend to go after. But less said about the last season, the better. But with Marvel cards, it's becoming much more of a thing recently with character collectors. So I go after the character Black Cat from Spider-Man and Norrin. Well, Norrin is obviously not your real name because Norrin Rad is the name of the Silver Surfer.
Yeah, that's right.
So that's his guy. So Norrin, you can talk about the certain green edition of your boy that eludes you to this day.
I'm so close to having everything from the Surfer in like a master collection, and the only son of a is the damn green PMG. It's the one that eludes me. So I might have to consult that Ring of Power and see if I can find it in some way.
Not a bad idea. Not a bad idea. Yeah, the grand, and there are only 10 of them, right?
Yeah,
so
only 10
just
of
makes
them.
it infinitely more difficult to find. But I do. I think it stands to reason, like on the sports world, people are player collectors still. And back when parallels and inserts were born, there were a lot of people claiming that was going to be the death of the player collector because it's just sheerly impossible to collect every, card of Ken Griffey Jr. or Michael Jordan or whoever. And I think I think that was a bit exaggerated. You collect what you like, and you collect what you can afford, and you collect by your means. And it's going to be. Although I'm very impressed that you've accumulated that many Silver Surfer cards, but it's nearly impossible to get everything these days. No. And as more and more products come out, it becomes more impossible. But you collect what you like and collect what you can. Within reason, and when that opportunity pops up, when one of those Silver Surfer greens, you got to, you may have
go
to
for it,
bank, but you got to go for it.
I got a few limbs I can auction off. I keep good friends that are willing to pay high prices for long arms or something like that. Just just keep them in your phone just in case. Like you need a kidney, well, time has come.
Hey, what did the Avengers say? Whatever it takes.
Whatever it takes. It's true.
Exactly.
And we talk about this in our group all the time. It's not, and one day, I'm sure soon, as it has already happened, starting with MM16, which Jusko set, is that, we've got into an era where you can't just collect a whole set, right? There's too many inserts, too many possibilities of things vanishing. I mean, one of the best things about EPAC that Ian and I talk about on the show all the time is that when something's pulled on EPAC, you know where it is, right? You can't always see that in a physical product, unfortunately, which is, why I always tend to enjoy that service so much. But more importantly, it's that, I think with modern Marvel collecting being as it is and tiered and all the inserts and all the different stuff, exactly what you're saying is kind of our the thing we live by on this show, which is you enjoy collecting what you can. You know what I mean? And you figure out ways to run your hobby, and what you find out is kind of what you're excited about. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, you all kidding aside, and selling limbs and things, you really it could really blow your mind, like how much there really is out there, and it's a nice challenge. So you really have to create parameters that make sense. There's just too many different things to choose from. So you really have to sort of narrow it down.
And there's a creativity to that too, I think. Ian and I talk about that all the time. There's creativity to like what kind of parallels, what kind of things, what serial number are you going to go for? You know what I mean? I think that's the biggest fun thing about collecting that Ian and I have experienced with our guests and our collectors and our artists is like, wow, I'm going to collect this one thing. You're like, I never thought to make a whole collection based on, this number or this color. It's pretty, I don't know, it's pretty fun.
Well, yeah. There is one guy who collects serial number 69 for some childish reason. And he was on and we interviewed him for our 69th episode because it just
we were so worried about talking about him. Yeah. We were like, this guy can either be really weird or just having a blast and just being funny. And luckily, it turned out having a blast and being pretty
very
funny.
much on the
that's
latter.
Good news.
Very much on the latter. I mean, he's from the Magic the Gathering side of things, so
okay.
I guess the centrifuge becomes a standard.
It's not our.
But I mean, I guess with Norrin, I mean, you've had a few years rest because your character's kind of been on the Marvel.
Poor Ian.
Whereas with me, my character's getting hit hard, and I'm sure you've probably got some stuff coming up that's going to drive me absolutely mad.
So you're in trouble. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for that. I'll blame you. So so we've talked a lot about the production side of things. Talk to me about kind of what you do now, which I think is very similar to what you did then in terms of the marketing side and the kind of the sales, I guess, more as the marketing and how, what kind of involvement you have now in your role at Upper Deck. Where do you sit now in terms of the Marvel product that's coming out and the other products that Upper Deck release?
Well, it's very different than back then because as mentioned earlier, when you didn't have an MCU back then. So you have this whole new sort of segment. Yeah, there were some movies here and there, but not like now, where you have sort of two different segments where you have the MCU and then you have publishing products. And they're very different and probably less of a different collector base now than there was even few years ago, 5, 6, 7 years ago. Kind of crosses over a lot more, I think, than it used to. But from a marketing standpoint, when you're dealing with a publishing product, you're dealing more with a seasoned sort of student of the Marvel universe, who also you have to assume has a history in trading cards and is aware of the advances of trading cards, and then on the MCU side, you have a little bit more of a mass market appeal because you're talking about the largest movies in history that are you're appealing a little bit more to a fan, and you have to gear your marketing efforts a little bit more that way. We're doing from an Upper Deck standpoint. We're greatly increasing and have been. We're not just starting, but a lot more focus on social media and enhancing that part of our focus, and also bringing on people who are just solely focused on engaging the community. And we've created just not that long ago some brand new positions internally that are solely focused on engagement with the community, can speak the language, have credibility, are passionate about the subject matter, and can really come off as they should, as credible and a reliable resource. That's primarily the difference between the two. But as the base grows, the collecting base grows, obviously it puts more pressure on us to become more innovative, to keep people engaged. I could tell you on the sports side, this has always been the case and is on the entertainment side as well. But collector expectations and demands never go down, and rightfully so. As we progress just in general as a society and as technological advances take form, it's expected that as a manufacturer we need to advance with them, and it's challenging. because like I said earlier, there's only so much you could do with a 2.5 by 3.5 inch piece of cardboard or whatever you're using. So, and look, the printing, while there have been some great advancements in printing, the printing sort of world in general is not what it used to be. There's not as much, demand for printed items. So, there's probably a little bit less investment, I would think, going on there. So we have to really dig deep to find some things that work in our space. So we continuously are looking for new ways to present, this vast universe of characters. It's a challenge, but it's also a lot of fun. And enables us to do some pretty neat things and try some things. And like I said, we're not always right. We try some things that just don't work. But we have been, knock on wood, we've been doing a pretty good job of late. And some of the things that we have coming down the pike, I think, are going to really, really be enjoyed by Marvel collectors. I really do.
So exciting. So exciting to hear
cool
that.
Stuff coming.
One thing all I was going to say was one thing I've just touching on from the sports to it feels like those streams are crossing in a big way, not least of which the inserts we've talked about, but some of the brands that are now starting to make the step over to Marvel. I mean, the most imminent one, of course, is Black Diamond, which has been announced. So, is it? Some of those brands, I'm never sure exactly which area of sports, because obviously you've got the big three in America. You've got basketball, you've got the hockey, you've got the football, or American football as we call. Oh, baseball, of course, as well.
Baseball all the time.
Yeah. Say typical Brit. I can't bloody remember things.
I'm no help at all. So I mean, this is really bad. So I'm sorry. My knowledge goes from Space Jam to Magic Johnson, and that's where I'm at. That's my. And Panthers, because hockey from Miami.
Oh, all right.
That's
fair enough.
That's embarrassing, but that's all I got. But I'm willing to learn.
Fair enough.
What are you going to do? So
you were talking about Black Diamond, though.
So Black Diamond, what area of sport does that come in from? Is it a baseball one? Is it a basketball one? Is it a hockey one? Where's it come from?
So Black Diamond is a brand that has been around for a little over 20 years now in our stable on the sports side. It was a brand when we used to do, we only primarily do hockey trading cards now on the sports side, but back when we were doing the four major sports, Black Diamond was a brand that you could find in all four sports. But it ultimately really took hold in hockey. Hockey is, for whatever reason, early on it was really based around what we call light FX technology, which is like an etched foil, sort of like what a PNG looks like, and so that light FX was really the predominant sort of feature of Black Diamond back then, and then there were varying levels of scarcity depending on how many diamonds were on the card, things like that. Cool brand. And then as it progressed and as collector taste changed and the demand was becoming greater for more higher end product, we took the Black Diamond brand in hockey up to a very high end, super premium, expensive product. And while there were some collectors who were disappointed, obviously you're not going to make everyone happy that brand that had been going on for so long at a particular price point changed so drastically. The overwhelming response was positive to where we brought it. And it enabled us to use some pretty neat technologies other than relying on autographs and game used items. It enabled us to deliver value in some really cool ways using gemstones and built into the cards and things like that. So let's say about 2 years ago, when we were looking at our portfolio and we really wanted to try some things on the Marvel side of the business, we were examining our sports brands and which ones sort of would cross over most effectively. And we really determined that Black Diamond with the gemstones, obviously, there's some real obvious no-brainers with regard to that in the Marvel universe. But there was some synergy between the two licenses. And we decided to bring that one over. We have another one. We have a couple other ones coming later on down the pike where we're going to apply some of our very well-known sports brands to the Marvel Universe as well down the road. But nice. Black Diamond will be that first sort of incarnation, and I'm really anxious to see how that nets out. And of course, lest we not forget that Metal Universe X-Men is also one around the corner as well. So you have those two legacy brands that'll be finding their way into the Marvel Universe, which will be a lot of fun.
You've just sat back and I've just spotted you've got an Upper Deck zip-up top on. That's branding. That's branding for you. Travis, bless him, had an Upper Deck mug, an Upper Deck cap.
He was the best.
Upper Deck beard, almost.
Yeah, we got to brand that beard.
Yeah, you got to brand that beard. Put some beads in it that spell Upper Deck.
No,
I see.
No, get him to shave it off for charity and put bits of it in cards. You could have beard cards. So when you do those Upper Deck staff cards, you could have like a relic card.
A piece of Travis' beard. I could see it.
We start going that, and my mind immediately goes to what our legal team's going to say about that. That's just the way I think.
Human
legal schmeagle. I think it's been done before. I'm absolutely certain it's been done before. It's funny enough. It seems to be fine to do it for people who've passed on. I'm sure I've seen relic cards in some areas with like dead people's hair in.
We did that back in the day. We did George Washington and several other prominent historical figures. We've done hair from racehorses, from horsehair. Yeah, so we've done some pretty neat things in the past with that. Yeah.
Yeah, and dead beetles and things like that. I know you've done before.
Oh so,
the dead beetle. That's right.
Not the musical kind. The actual insects.
No, the actual insects. So if no one's brought a lawsuit about that, then I think you'll be fine with Travis's beard.
That's true. Travis's beard is looking better and better.
That's completely thrown me now. No, the thing about Metal Universe is it's something you said a short while back makes sense now, because when we went through the Metal Universe pre-release material, we always do a preview show whenever that drops into the marketplace, and we go over it with a fine-tooth comb and try to spot all the little clues and hints and things like that, and just talk about it for people. And one of the things we spotted was that the PMGs on one of them went green 1 to 10, and then the numbering carried on 11 through to 99 in a different color. Of course, that makes perfect sense now. Mm-hmm. When you talk about the experience of those early PMGs, but we'd never, because I remember we stopped and looked at each other. We were like, "Why?"
Yeah.
and it's funny. There's that was, I remember that meeting like it was yesterday back at Fleer when we were talking about doing that, and this was the early days of Parallels, mind you, and the thought there was, well, you can always do a parallel numbered out of 10 and another one numbered out of 100, and then all you have two different parallels, right? Like, this sort of relatively simple, but no one had ever done anything like that, and I'm not sure anybody's done anything since like that, where you take the first 10 and do them differently than the remaining 89 or 90 or whatever it's numbered to, and it was something worth trying because it was different, and it just worked. It just worked, and it blew people away because they didn't get it. They're like, "Wait, why is this one green?" And all the ones I'm seeing are red. And then this was green. Well, they come to realize that the first 10 of every player, and in this case every character, were green, true to the original.
That's going to be great. I know people are so excited about X-Men Metal. I know people are just waiting, just getting primed and ready.
Just waiting.
Yeah, I only wish, I believe that was supposed to have been out already. But, with
everything being as crazy.
We're just facing so many challenges right now from a production standpoint that one is unfortunately one of the victims of that. But it'll be out soon enough.
Well, this is interesting actually, because obviously I don't want you to repeat what you said on that other show, but there's one thing I did want to get into, just because I think he fired some pretty direct questions at you from the sports guys, who seem to be pretty ferocious, some of them, in terms of how direct the questions were, and you fielded them like a true pro. So anything we throw at you will be absolutely water off a duck's back. but talk to us a little bit about, because I think there is a little bit of crossover, but a lot of the guys who collect Marvel simply won't hear what you were saying about the modern difficulties you've been having in the last year with production, because they won't experience that. So I think they probably would be good for that community to hear it. So I guess notwithstanding the recent freeze that you touched on, what are the biggest challenges you're finding at the moment, just in terms of getting the product made?
Yeah, they are. They are challenges like in all my years that I've described to you guys. I've never seen anything like what we've gone through the past year. Obviously, in life in general, but from a production standpoint and trying to bring a product to market, it's been unprecedented. And I preface this with like I always do when I talk about this. One of the things I love about working where I do, and you guys, I'm sure, see it very clearly when you interview people like our president, Jason Mashera, or people like Travis or Bubby Johansson. We all are cut from the same cloth in that we take a lot of pride in what we do. We do it. We're very passionate about it. And when things don't go as we plan, we take it very personally, even though we're not supposed to. It's a job, and once you leave your office, you kind of leave that in its space. That's easier said than done. And we've all been doing this a long time, and we really understand how collectors think and feel. And when things happen that are unpleasant, whether it be damaged cards, whether it be redemption cards, whether it be delays in production, we take a lot of that personally into heart, and we don't like that, and it's difficult, and we do everything in our power to try to mitigate those. So, but when you run into a situation like we have with COVID, it affects things in obvious ways, but then it affects things in so many ways that are not obvious. When this first started about a year ago, first and foremost, a lot of our customers were forced to close, and so from an outlet standpoint, there was that part, but we also had an issue where the facility where the cards are produced was trying to stay open, and fortunately, we have a few of them in various states, and everything was based on the mandates in the particular state that they were operating in. So everything was a little bit different. And our facility in one of the states we produce cards in was deemed an essential because they're a printer, and they also printed packaging for other industries and things like that. So they were able to keep producing things. But in another state down in Texas, they were forced to close at some point. And it's just set the whole industry back. Most trading card manufacturers use them. And it set everything back. And there was no new product coming out, which, the side benefit of that, if you want to call it a benefit, was that it drove people to start ripping through all the older stuff, including the stuff that we mentioned earlier that was produced in pretty big quantity and has now become hard to find because people wanted cards to open and there just wasn't anything new coming out. So those are the obvious ones. But then you start thinking about the less obvious things, like when things started to get back to some sense of, I'll use this term lightly, but normalcy over the summer, and facilities were able to open, they were able to open under some pretty serious new protocols. And those protocols meant having people spaced much farther apart, only allowing a certain amount of people on the production floor at a time. And when you're talking about something as complicated as producing trading cards that, have a lot of different stages that they go through and feeders that feed and, getting the cards in packs and boxes. If you think about this whole process, it involves hundreds and hundreds of people, but you can't have hundreds and hundreds of people. So you're talking about at capacities of less than 50% of what normal production would be. So setting everything back further. And then, so that's another thing. Then you had outbreaks. And if somebody tested positive, they had to shut down, whether it be at the actual production facility or at another facility which maybe prints the sheets for you. If they had an issue there, shut down. So there are all these things that maybe you wouldn't think about that greatly affected things throughout the production process. And it's just set everything back. So now, and then on top of it, you have issues where the production facilities were having an unbelievably hard time getting people to come into work. And if you think about it, even to this day, it's a bit traumatic when you have been out of somewhere so long. You don't want to contract COVID, and and you're concerned for yourself, your family, and you just don't feel comfortable going into work. So you're struggling to get people to come in, and then when they do come in, they're working and they're probably nervous, so they're not working at full capacity. So there's all these different things, and we're still fighting through that to this day. There are still several protocols in place that just make things a little bit less efficient than we're used to. And that is all added to these and contributed to these production delays that we still face. And we'll probably continue to face for the foreseeable future, I would say, through this calendar year.
Wow.
It's been a challenge. And on top of that, some people ask, well, why does this or that happen from a quality standpoint? We can't, one of the other protocols is we can't witness any of the production. We can't send people in there to do things like press checks. So we're, flying a little blindly when it comes to that. And oftentimes we can't detect something until we're opening finished product, which is not ideal. And then you have just other things like approvals. I mean, people are working from home, so getting approvals on things is a lot more difficult and challenging, and understandably so. So there are just a myriad of reasons for things to be delayed, and we're doing the best we can, but it's logistical challenges, trucking companies. I mean, there's so many things. And then you mentioned that freeze down in Dallas last week, in Texas, I should say. I mean, that will set us back a couple weeks again, all the manufacturers. So, a minor inconvenience compared to the catastrophe that was that affected so many people's lives. But it does and so sad. But it does contribute to some of what we're going through today.
Yeah, your entire supply chain, effectively.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. We definitely appreciate you going through that. We know there's tons of challenges you guys go through, and we know you all do really hard work. And everyone we've ever spoken from Upper Deck has been nothing but kind and so passionate and so excited about the product. And it's very nice to be near that. And I know our listeners also really appreciate seeing it firsthand too.
Yeah. One thing you touched on, actually, which I find quite interesting, is, of course, the other thing is with the brand, Marvel being a licensor. Is that the phrase? Licensee? Yeah. Who's the licensor?
Licensor. We're the licensee.
Yeah. There we go. I knew I'd get it. Sorry, it's late in the day. There's my excuse. Obviously, there's the challenges of that. I guess from the sports side, it relies much more heavily on the talent, if you like, especially with signatures and things like that, which is still an aspect of Marvel cards, but less of an aspect. Certainly in terms of the actual autograph side of things, it's a much smaller pool. But then you've got the aspect of artists who are doing the sketch cards. So I guess that, to a large degree, is your bigger talent pool rather than the athletes on the.
Absolutely, yeah, that would be the parallel. The best parallel would, we have autograph collection on one side, and on the entertainment side, the closest thing to that would be the artists. Absolutely, and it's not exactly apples to apples, because obviously on an autograph you just sign your name and you could knock those out, several hundred of those in an hour. And an artist, you hope, is taking a little bit more time than that to create a sketch, right? And then, of course, you have the actual artwork. I'm referring more to the sketch artists as a parallel to the autographs, obviously. But then you also have the artists who create the original artwork for the card sets themselves, which is also an added. And that's something that really doesn't necessarily have a parallel on the sports side. But yeah, you are at the mercy of a lot of moving parts, many which are out of your control.
Yeah.
then you have much different parameters. You're dealing with photography on the sports side predominantly, and you're dealing with artwork or in some instances imagery from films, movies, and TV shows. So there are some pretty significant differences, but they each have their own things that do take a significant amount of time, and you, as a licensee, you are at the mercy of those outside forces, and you just have to hope and keep your fingers crossed that they will honor the timetables, and they don't always, and life happens. We learn how to deal with that, but we do our best to try to partner up with those that we feel will be able to honor those timelines.
So nevertheless, amongst all of this, you are clearly elevating and expanding the amount of both talent, energy, and volume of Marvel product that you're going to be putting out into the market in the next year, 2 years, 3 years. That's to do all that on top of everything that you've been experiencing over the last 12 months. I doff my cap to you, sir. That must be quite a challenge. I know that Travis gave us a few little scoops, and I'm not going to ask you for any scoops, but I guess from my point of view, I'm just curious, where you see, with your experience, where you see kind of what the next big thing will be. Obviously, at the moment, it's grading and PMGs are the two things, and sometimes that crosses over, and people are going nuts about those. And there's all sorts of speculation as to whether that's a bubble or whether it's going to just chill out a bit, but it will become the new normal. What do you see? It could be on the sports side as well, because obviously that will eventually affect Marvel cards, I'm sure. What do you see as the next kind of either big thing or big trend that you would expect to see happening, maybe as COVID eases?
Yeah, it's hard to say without revealing anything obviously proprietary. I shared my excitement and confidence in some of the things we're working on and how they'll be received, from a near-term standpoint. When I say near-term, we're working on 2023 right now, so we're pretty far out. But I honestly I think that a lot of what's going on right now, yes, I think it'll, like you said, I think it'll chill out a little bit. The thing going on right now that I'm a little bit concerned about is, this sort of migration to grading, and how important grading has become in all trading cards. And it's not a secret. The grading companies are overwhelmed with submissions, and I think they're trying to mitigate that with a combination of things, including price increases and a expansion of at least tempering consumer expectations of how long it'll take to get their cards back, and trying, quite honestly, to hire people to become graders, which is probably not that easy to hire for. You have to have a pretty good knowledge base of our industry, certainly. So I fear that what's driving a lot of the rapid sort of opening of cards these days is that getting in there and finding that card that you can grade out at a 10 and flip pretty quickly. That segment, if grading doesn't catch up, that may lessen a little bit. Remains to be seen, because I think there potentially could be some frustration that sets in, both at the cost and the difficulty in the cards back. And there's some new companies coming into that arena that are going to take some time to build credibility and consumer confidence. So that could help that, but it's going to take some time. And quite frankly, I'm blown away at how grading has grown on the entertainment side of the business. That is something I never would have predicted. And I look at it now and I say, all right, it makes some sense, but some of the things being graded and the prices being realized on the entertainment side, particularly on the Marvel trading card side, just blow my mind. It's awesome. Yeah. But it just speaks to how passionate the collectors are of some of that stuff and the appreciation towards it. So I see that continuing, and honestly, I think there's the obvious question about the world of digital cards and how that really factors in and meshes with the physical world, and that's why I think ePack is such a impactful platform and is such a innovative platform in that it bridges that gap between the digital and the physical in a way that, in my mind is the perfect, confluence of you can buy cards wherever you are in the world, and if you'd like to get that physical card sent to you, you can. I mean, that's and if you don't want to, you can keep it stored on the platform and sell it if you'd like. It gives you so many options. But where does that go? I mean, we're seeing things right now. I'm sure you guys have seen or heard about NBA Top Shot, which is this massive initiative where you buy a video clip of an NBA player and it comes out of a digital pack. That's become real popular lately, but I just don't. It remains to be seen if those things have staying power, and it doesn't have a link to the physical world, which is a little bit separate of what our forte is. So I don't know ultimately where that will land, but I do know that as every new collector and the younger generation comes in, their knowledge base is different than what the three of us are used to and what we know is the norm. And to be able to predict what that's going to be, well, that's a challenge. We do our best to try to be in the front of that, but at the end of the day, it's impossible to truly know. But it's certainly one thing I've learned about this business is I will never cease to be amazed. Things just blow me away. New things, new innovations, new things that become popular, and I'm very confident that there will be things that none of us have thought of yet that in the not too distant future will be introduced and just set the industry on yet another path. So it's a really fun industry to be in, and it's a really fun time to be in it.
I love that so much, and I appreciate everything that you said, and it's obviously great wisdom. And it was funny because it made me think of the time we interviewed Bob Budiansky, who was sitting there with Marvel cards and trying to do Marvel cards for Marvel at the time, the 1990 Marvel Universe that's kind of blown up right now, which is, what we're talking a little bit about. And he was saying how much fun they had, how they had the fun facts, how they wrote weird stuff on the back, you know what I mean? The designs, the characters they got to use, the original art. And I think, you bring up PMGs and coming up with Jambalaya and all this stuff. I think what's really great, and as long as there's a lot of fun being had and a lot of excitement over the pieces during the creation, people come back to it. You know what I mean? People eventually find. I mean, we're seeing that now with Marvel cards, and I think all of us collectors are just really excited to be like, yeah, I told you, these are awesome.
and you know what? And to piggyback on that point, one of the it's not really a new phenomenon by any means anymore, but certainly a little bit newer on the entertainment side of things is the whole concept of group breaks and online breaks. And I think that has done a lot of really beneficial things to the industry, but more than anything else, it's made our hobby and our industry more visible, and it exposes so many more people to the excitement. I mean, when you watch some of these breaks and you see the reactions of people when they get certain things, you can't help but want to be a part of that.
Yeah.
And understand that and know what that, and have the opportunity to know what that feels like, right? Like, and you want to participate. And I think that's done just a tremendous amount to bring new people in and experience what we all know and what's great about collecting. The visibility of it, social media certainly has done a tremendous job in spreading the message and utilizing that technology, that real-time live technology, to bring together that community to share in the card opening experience. I mean, people who don't know what we're talking about right now, just think we're nuts, right? Like, so like, why would you want to watch someone opening up a pack of cards? But once you give it a shot and you try it, you're like, you get it quickly.
Quickly.
And you can't help but get hooked. And I think that's just done an unbelievable job of bringing new people into collecting trading cards. And I don't see that part slowing down anytime soon.
No, not at all. Not at all. One of the things we also see is we see people doing videos of mail calls where they've had stuff arrive, be it vintage. I mean, I do it myself because what I tend to do is I tend to have stuff shipped to Norrin here or other friends in the US, and then they send me like 6 months worth of all the good cheddar, and I just do a half an hour video of me opening it, and half of the stuff I've forgotten I even bought because it's just in there.
Well, grading is another example of that, right? Like, so when you send off a card to be graded, you've already had that experience of opening the pack and pulling that card out of the pack. Well, now you've extended that experience because now you're waiting to get that mail of see what grade you got. Don't read the email that tells you what your grades are. Right?
Just don't tell me.
That, right? And just wait till you get the package in and open that thing up, and you one by one you look at what you got. I mean,
yes.
That's excitement.
Well, it's a little bit like that with your e-pack, and then when you get it delivered from
the craziness. Yes. Yeah. Like we've had videos where we're like, we hadn't seen certain effects in real time. You know, we see a picture of it. We haven't seen like video of it or anything. So when collectors get packages first from e-pack and they're like, oh, check out that rainbow foil. And then everyone's like, all right, hold up. Everybody goes to e-pack. Like, let me combine some cards here.
Oh yeah, we've definitely done that. You guys must be tickled pink at how fast Masterpieces sold out on e-pack this time. 4 days, 2.5 hours. I calculated it. I think.
Yes and no.
Okay.
So it's a blessing and a curse. It's a little bit of a blessing and a curse, right? So, I mean, yeah, it's from a sales standpoint. If I'm putting on my pure revenue hat, yeah, I mean it's fantastic. It sells out. It's great. But from a collector standpoint, and a little bit from a manufacturer standpoint, you look at that, and ideally you'd like it to be on there a little bit longer so that more people could have access to it and enjoy it and be able to get, be able to participate in it. So there is that. It's a double-edged sword for sure. And Marvel Masterpiece is one of those ones that we spend a lot of time talking about internally because I love how the product is built, and clearly collectors love it, and the reimagining of it from the earlier Upper Deck sets even. But one of the challenges with it is we've kind of painted ourselves in a corner a little bit. It's all serially numbered, and so what do you do? How do you get that to more people? How do you get it to more collectors? How do you give them more collectors the opportunity to enjoy it and collect it? And it's not an easy answer. So that's something that we're always discussing internally, and sort of challenging ourselves to come up with ways to broaden that. But yeah, I mean, it's fun to see how quickly something sells out, but also, you do feel for the people who don't get that opportunity to get to participate.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I know Norrin, you had a power cut when Fleer Ultra Spider-Man sold out for like 4 days.
It was the worst. I got part of the ice storm.
And all kidding aside, you did have a lot of time to buy that, right? Like, were you snoozing there? Were you?
He bought plenty. He just couldn't dive in at the end.
Down here, I don't need this. No, definitely. I had done a rainbow of a character named Spot and just had my fill of it. But there's something special about the groups, and we all know each other. So someone always checks. All right, I can put 99 cases in my cart, so it hasn't sold out. It's not going down. So that's someone always checking.
So we do. Jason and I are both big fans of data. So when we get the reports and we see all of a sudden there's this spike in Ultra Spider-Man after it's been out for all this time, it's always fun to try to figure out why that happened or what happened. Yeah, now I know a little bit more.
Yep, it's always us. It's poor.
There was an episode we did where he was on in fact, the visuals for the episode is literally Norrin standing in front of a printout of everyone who's got the card in the trading marketplace and little dots and crosses on it where he's like figuring out, which one should I go after next when he's trying to get 100 cards together.
Oh, it's great. It's great.
and it just and that was the little flurry that Fleer Ultra Spider-Man went on back in the spring. So
it's like a digital last year. When it's about to sell out, that's what it ends up being. Everyone just shows up suddenly, and no one's busy. And everyone's like, "All right, let's do this, guys. You ready?"
It sells out, and the party breaks up, and everyone goes home. It's interesting because obviously there's more premium sets coming onto the Marvel side now, and I'm just thinking back, I can think back now to where some things were maybe tried a little bit on the Marvel side and then have come back. So, for example, Marvel Gems was the first Marvel set I think had the diamonds in, and they've obviously come back now with the MCU sets. And then you had the Fleer Retro sets in 2013 and 15, which introduced the PMGs into the Marvel side of things. But I guess the first Premier brand, I guess, was Premier back in 2012. Travis indicated that you might have a particular connection or affinity with Premier, but I don't know if I misread what he was saying. But from, you've been at Upper Deck for such a long time, from the Masterpieces 2007 set, which is my favourite set of all of them. But Marvel Premier, do you? How was that from a point of view of planning and selling and putting that into marketplaces? Probably the first premium level Marvel set.
I think you're right. Certainly when you're talking about like a single pack product, it was definitely. I remember when we were working on and planning that, there was a little bit of the unknown, but we felt good about it. It was going to basically, taking what had become the norm in sports and trying it on the Marvel side. I think we felt like we had gotten to that point with our Marvel portfolio that it was time to try that. And the Premier brand is a brand that we've had on the sports side for 20 years as a high-end hockey product. And it just seemed natural. Now, it wasn't going to be built the same way as our sports product, obviously, because one is relying on autographs, game used, and this one would be relying much more on original art, sketches, things like that. But it was, in my mind, that one, that was a no-brainer. That was an easy one, and it worked. It had all the components that at the time just made sense, and it really came out better than I think we all thought. And as time has gone on, we've tried. Again, I talk about expectations. You try to, as best you can, improve on those expectations of collectors, and that one is we do it every other year. Give or take, we alternate with Marvel Masterpieces, kind of what we try to do, because both of those sets just take a couple years to build. And this year is the Premier year, so hopefully this fall we'll see Premier. Knock on wood, from a timing perspective, we would still pull that off. That's been just a really great. New item. It's not new anymore, but at the time was a new item in the portfolio. Travis mentioned that I'm partial to that one. I think he may been thinking that because just from a sales standpoint, it was such a pleasure to sell that product. I was wondering if he was referring more to Flair Marvel, which also goes back to my old days. I was very much looking forward to that coming out. And I think that product was good. I think we probably could have done some things better. And I'm certainly lobbying for us to bring that product back again for another try. And I feel like good chance you're going to see that again in the not too distant future.
Yeah.
But there are some cool things from the original that we could take from that that I think we can incorporate in here. I don't know if you guys remember, but back then I think it was 94 Flair Marvel, somewhere around there, where the master cases were called Flair prints. I think they were prints, master prints, like the oversized, and those are still very popular. Just little touches like that at trying to add those things in, and doing a better job with those and some of the other. I would have loved to have figured out a way to incorporate. We call them kind of like the cigarette box, the top and the bottom.
Those boxes.
But those are the best. But man, we spent a lot of money on packaging back in those days. Like you think about those you go back and look. I have one here, and I know this is a basketball, and I know
stunning.
Your listeners won't be able to see this.
Yeah.
But like this is etched foil on these, and that is insanely expensive. And you think about now, the idea there was, collectors would open it and then they'd use that box to store the cards in them. And now everyone just wants to rip open the foil and be done with it and put it in a case, right? So you can't really justify those boxes. Otherwise, you won't like the box price. So we kind of don't really want to go there.
There is a hardcore contingent of collectors, and I'm one of them, who opens a lot of wrappers very carefully. So each of my binders 100%. has four pocket pages with wrappers in them. I have, and those flare boxes are a pain in the ass to store from that point of view, from a binder guy point of view. But the boxes are always neatly flattened down, and they live under a long box of comics for a week just so that they stay flat when they go into the binder. What else can I tell you? I really obviously, promo cards and official binders and all that sort of stuff. We love that sort of thing.
So great. For Marvel collectors, that is just gold. We go back for those master prints, those case toppers. They're so great too. We're waiting for like the e-pack exclusive like box printout of a digital only thing, or you know what I mean, like a small like gallery print of packaging. I don't know. I'm just saying. I'm just putting it out there.
Yeah, there's so many different things that you can do. We just, from a capacity standpoint, you only can get to a fraction of them, but they're especially on the Marvel side, on the entertainment side, there's just so many neat creative things you could do that, obviously as long as they're within your licensing parameters, there's some pretty neat things we still can do. I personally, I'm a big collector. I'm a little jaded because I'm close to all this stuff, so it's not, I don't have the same type of collecting bug I used to have in the same way, but I still do collect. But I collect oddball things like uncut sheets, and because you don't see them that often. I like the challenge of those, and entertainment cards in particular, because there's so much color, just look fantastic as an uncut sheet. I'm partial to that. But yeah, I like all those sort of oddball things. I don't think I'm a big believer on the Marvel side, especially that, I'm amazed at what we can do again on that small piece of cardboard, but the Marvel, the property itself, and the history and the characters are so better suited to a bigger, sort of size of a medium, and if you can do that, collectors tend to not want to move away from that 2.5 by 3.5 inch piece of cardboard. But, when you have a bigger medium to work on, you can really bring out the artwork. And, that's always a challenge that we continuously look at to see if there's something we could do that's not your traditional size. So, we're always exploring that as well.
That was the great thing about Premiere too.
Yes,
you had those sketches. You know what I mean, on the tins. The 5x7, the multi-panel. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So we'll see.
So great.
One of my most beloved, I guess, oversized pieces that Upper Deck have produced were those box toppers for the Masterpieces 2008 series that you did. They were the 5x7, I think. They were the same size as the Premiere sketches. Yeah, and they were just stunning. Just the choice of the artwork on those. Mm-hmm. Yeah. They were absolutely wonderful things. So, I'd lap up any of Palumbo's work, for example.
And there was
Flair artist's work.
Yeah, there was also in the earlier days, there was a little bit more of a reluctance to do things like box toppers or case toppers, because the only person who was going to get those would be, dealers or shop owners or someone who bought a full box. So if you were a pack buyer, you'd never have access to them unless you bought them on the secondary market. But so much of today's collecting world is done by the box. That I think there's a little bit less resistance to doing that, and it's just there's a cost obviously involved in that. So, but I'm a big proponent of those odd size cards.
Beautiful.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned uncut sheets. I was going to mention that because I heard you infusing about them and even showing one of your OG sports sets that you worked on the other show. I remember when we spoke to Bob Budiansky, he was just picking up uncut sheet after uncut sheet, and we were just on the floor. It's like, and he's like, yeah, I got hundreds of these. It's like, of course, you worked at Marvel at the time, so you were creating them. I guess I get the impression that you're probably slightly more on the sports side in terms of your own personal tastes and your own personal collecting. Would I be right?
That is true. I'm a huge sports fan, so I'm a sports guy. But I'm very partial to Marvel. I in addition to working for a licensee of Marvel for, how many years is it? If you include the distributor Heroes World and Fleer and Upper Deck, I mean, it's like 28 years. So I have a real affinity and a connection to Marvel. But I'm a diehard sports guy. So that's my bread and butter and the foundation of my experience in the trading card business. But I can't pick apart artwork like you guys probably can with the same eye and appreciation, but I can certainly appreciate when something looks really cool, and I can appreciate when when something, when you look at something and you can say I can understand why that has significant value, and that translates over no matter what the property is.
Absolutely. So absolutely.
Yes. Yeah. I think that's what's so magical about cards is that even like for us, like for me, who's like didn't collect tons of sports cards back in the day, Ian collects these hockey cards sometimes, and he shows me these booklets and the jerseys and the booklet dear. One. NFL dear. Sorry.
In any playbook.
Sorry. Yeah. Anyway, but I've seen a few and they're absolutely beautiful, so I can definitely see that design as well.
Yeah, I mean,
it's I have to say, back when from my days at Fleer, I mentioned how talented that group that I got to work with. I mean, if you think of some of the every trading card manufacturer has people working there in important positions who their early days were at Fleer, even Marvel. I mean, you look at some of the people who work at Marvel right now. I mean, including people at the very, very top.
Yeah.
There are former Fleer employees there as well, and it's impressive. We didn't realize fully what we had at the time. It was pretty special.
We're kind of making it a little mission of ours to track these people down and just talk to them. It's kind of become a bit of a personal quest for me, just to kind of orally, the oral history, I guess, if you like, of that time, because the internet wasn't around really.
Right.
You've got, you obviously had Wizard, you had Previews, you had Cards Illustrated for a few years, and you had some smaller magazines, but a lot of that is lost now because it's not in digital form. So collectors now who maybe came into it, in the noughties or in the whatever the decade is after the noughties, the teens, just don't know a lot about they love the sets because they've discovered them retrospectively, as a lot of people are now discovering Marvel Universe 1990, but they might not know the history of how they came about. And so, talking to people like yourself who have a foot very firmly on the OG, if you like, and the modern is a privilege for us to be able to do that, but also for our listeners, to be able to hear it.
Oh, I'm glad. Like I mentioned to you guys previously, one of my favorite things to do is talk about this industry and this hobby and collecting. I have a job to do, but there are a few things I enjoy more than talking and telling stories and listening to other people's stories and the history behind a lot of things. And I'm just glad that it's nice to see people who appreciate trading cards as much as I do. It's always a pleasure to talk about it. So I do appreciate that.
Well, bless you, sir. Well, we'll let you get back to that job in a moment. I always do a couple of quick fire questions for Upper Deck employees, which is either hugely embarrassing or a ton of fun, depending on which way it goes. So we'll go there. So first question is Avengers or X-Men?
I would have to say Avengers. Actually, I say that hesitantly, but I should say that with more confidence.
Yes. Marvel are listening. Possibly, probably. I don't know. Do they listen to us? You would know. Next time you're on a call with them, ask them. And they'll probably hit us with a lawsuit straight away, cease and desist. And I think I know the answer to this one because since I started asking this, everyone's given the same answer. Have you had a trading card made of yourself and or a caricature of yourself? Would it by any chance be a bystander card from Marvel Legendary?
No.
Oh.
It's not, but that raises a whole other issue that if other people are saying yes, then I need to get one of those.
Yeah. Everyone's had one so far. I mean,
that's crazy.
Seriously, Mike.
Well, let me rephrase that. not that I know of.
It's been a kept secret.
Yeah.
And if there was one done, I'm going to have to consult my attorney on that one and find out what I should be asking for. No,
there's going to be a strongly worded email either way, I think.
No, I have a trading card that was done for me a couple years ago that was given out at the industry summit. But other than that, I think that's it.
That's really cool.
Well, one's more than most people get, unless, of course, you're Chris Evans. Mike, it's been an absolute delight to talk to you. Thank you for making some time for us.
My pleasure.
Everyone we speak to from Upper Deck is just brims with passion and pride in the products that you put out, and I can kind of see where that comes from. It's obviously a very top-down kind of attitude.
I always like to tell people a day doesn't go by when I don't think about how lucky I am to be doing something that I love. A lot of people go through the motions in their job every day, and I am very fortunate that I get to do something and work in an industry that I've always wanted to ever since I was a kid, and I never take that for granted. And I think I especially enjoy working at Upper Deck because a lot of people share that same feeling, and it just makes it a pleasure to work there.
Good. Well, I'll tell you what else you make it a pleasure to do, Mike, and that is our sign-off at the end of every episode.
Enjoy collecting.
Thanks for listening to the Marvel Card Collectors Podcast. Visuals and tasting notes for each episode can be found on our Facebook page. You can subscribe and leave us a voicemail via our home on anchor.fm/MCCP. We're also on iTunes, Spotify, and all major podcast platforms. Please take a second to subscribe, like, and review our show wherever you get your podcasts. Our podcast can be found by Googling at the MCC Pod, which will also find us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram. Our Facebook community is at MCCW, Marvel Card Collectors Worldwide, and MMC, Marvel Masterpieces Collectors. The great music we use is called Rocket Power by Kevin MacLeod. Thanks to the collectors, artists, and creators who support the Marvel Cards Fan Collective. We'll see you next time, and remember, it's a small hobby but a fun one. Make mine Marvel and enjoy collecting.